EPA was going to get together and make all these decisions when we're the ones that actually have to deal with the consequences of whatever the Environmental Protection Agency makes. Now, you're saying this was sort of more of a technical session.
Well, it is a technical session, and typically we're going to go in there. We have an agenda, which is things we're going to talk about are sampling fish in the air, in the water bodies around the landfill, how to potentially address leachate, which is contamination that is leaking from the landfill into the surface water bodies. There is the issue of PFCs at the aquarium wells. That's also something we were going to discuss. We were going to discuss moving ahead with an investigation of the bedrock, which has not been, we don't really have a good idea of how the contamination is moving once it gets down deep into the bedrock. So those, and the last thing we would discuss is communication with the public, because we have had periodic public meetings. We're planning one for probably mid-October to late October at this point, and we would be asking, Coakley Landfill Group to participate in that meeting. So there's probably, decisions probably aren't going to be made. These topics will be discussed at the meeting. Then, depending on what they have to say, what we have to say, we'll then ask them or direct them, depending on what the issue is, to take action following that meeting. We would report out to the public, what transpires at the meeting. So we're not, we're not going to come out of this meeting with a list of things that we've all agreed on that are going to impact people without hearing from people in the area.
Okay.
Russ?
No, my only concern is that you do listen to the people that are in the area. We have water. We have, as you said, aquariums already started to get problems going on.
Right.
And I think we should be involved in part of that too, where it's our citizens' water. You have many people that polluted that, including the U.S. government.
Right.
And so we want to just make sure that our citizens are protected, and that's why we've asked to be part of this and make sure that we can be part of it.
Right. Well, I think our goal is to protect the citizens, and I know that it's EPA's responsibility to protect human health. We have certain tools that we can use. The Superfund program is one of them. We also have a drinking water program that, along with DES, regulates the public water supplies. And we're going to be trying to set up a meeting with Aquarian in the near future also. We just need to gather more information. The way that we work, unfortunately, is we kind of have silos. In our office, we have a drinking water program. We have a Superfund program. We go about doing our business occasionally. We have common issues. This is one of the common issues, and we are, trying to move ahead as quickly as we can. It's not as quick as people would like. These are emergent contaminants that we're talking about. They are not, we don't have the authority to order Coakley Landfill Group to go and start sampling wells all over the place until contamination hits a certain level. That's something that people really don't want to hear. I'm also would think that people don't want to give EPA that type of authority to just go in and tell people that they should be forcing them to do stuff that doesn't meet the criteria that's set up through Superfund. Superfund's evolved over 35 years. EPA has a lot of authority, but there are a lot of things that we just can't move ahead. There are a lot of rules and regulations that we have to follow. I think people can understand that. It's frustrating at times for all of us, but we're trying to move ahead as best we can. And again, the Coakley Landfill Group has been open to a number of the suggestions that we've had to them, we've made to them over the past months, things that they have not had to do. And I think one of the suggestions that I would have is that people here, they're your neighbors. A lot of these responsible parties at Superfund sites are multinational corporations. They might not even have headquarters in the United States. They're very difficult to talk to. These people are your neighbors. some of the towns in the area. I think, approaching the Coakley landfill group is, I'm not saying that that's going to solve any problems, but just to have communication at that level, instead of just expecting that, EPA is going to take care of it, and get the word out to everybody, which we will try to do, but we do have to work through our process. It's not going to hurt to have, local legislators, local elected officials also talking with Coakley, talking amongst yourselves, talking with the Aquarian. I think a lot of that is happening, and hopefully we're gonna make progress. But again, there's only so many. We pretty much have to stay in our lane. Our bottom line is that we want to protect people from drinking contaminated water, but it needs to hit a certain level before we can kind of put the hammer down and us shut down a well or us order somebody to provide alternative water. That can be done, but it can't be done at the levels that we found it at thus far. And there's been a lot of talk about, well, obviously Coakley landfill is the reason for all of this contamination in the area. That may well be, but we do not have the proof for that right now. We're trying to track it from the landfill. That's one of the reasons we want to meet with Aquarian to find out, from their technical people, exactly where the wells are, how deep they are, how often they're monitored, what type of, century wells they have in the area. So we have a lot of information still to gather, and I know we're not moving as fast as people would like to see us move, but we're taking it very seriously. We're putting resources into it, and we just hope to make progress on it.
Mr. Griffin?
She has legislation. She is on governor-appointed and legislative body-appointed commissions, and I would ask that she be allowed to ask Jim questions pertinent to Hampton's interest in this issue.
Could I just respond first?
Yeah.
Okay. So the Gerardo Milan Ramos, who is our scientist on this, may be going to Puerto Rico. If he goes to on the hurricane response down there, the work on Coakley is not stopping. However, if I said that in an email or a memo, it was just to let people know he's not available for a public meeting for a while. The work is not going to stop. We have other people, other scientists who are at work on the Coakley project. It's not going to stop.
Thank you, Jim.
Gerardo is not available for a meeting.
Thank you.
And I was going to respond to something else, but I forget what it is, so I'd be happy to take other questions.
Now, what was your request?
Representative Messner, who was spearheading this issue on myriad fronts, both in government and governor-appointed commissions, has questions that directly impact and are specifically directed in the interest of Hampton water drinkers, and I would like her to be able to ask Jim questions.
Okay, hang on. Does the board have any objections to that?
Oh.
Does anybody on the board have any other questions that they want to ask at this point? No? Okay. You can go to the podium, please.
So,
Introduce yourself so that
I'm
we know who you are.
Representative Mindy Mesmer from Rye in Newcastle, and I've been heading up the Coakley Landfill Subcommittee for the Governor's Task Force for the last year and a half or so, and been actively involved in this situation for the last year and a half, investigating the possible causes of cancer cases in the five-town area. The first issue that came up was Coakley Landfill to our task force, and so I've been involved very actively in, as a hydrogeologist, looking at this issue. And so for the last year and a half, I've been asking a lot of questions about this, and for the last year and a half, at many times, EPA has sort of mischaracterized some of the comments I've made by saying that I was mischaracterizing the flow from the site, and this was very important because, as this 1994 document says, groundwater flow is radial, and every time I said radial, Gerardo countered me. And I just brought this to the attention. I found this in a 1994 document. This is important because if it's flowing radially, it's flowing to the south and towards Hampton, as well as to the north and the east and the west, like we had talked about. So you know, it's been a process of trying to get people on the same page with the hydro-GO that doesn't change since 1994. So, and my concern has been that PFCs would migrate, and now I believe we're seeing them. As I said, today I sent an email to the EPA and DES talking about the recent results that were taken in May of wells by Aquarian and how they compare with the results in May that were collected at the landfill. And my concern is there is a migration component to the south. There is a preferential flow path that's been partially identified, partially sampled, 500 or 600 parts per trillion on the landfill. And we're seeing the same cadre of PFCs showing up now in the wells in Hampton that serve Hampton from Aquarian. So that's my concern. I pointed that out this morning. So I would also talk about the fact that the fact that there are emerging contaminants is past now. That the people who talk about emerging contaminants have taken them off the list. We already know enough to know that they do cause some cancers. So most people don't even call them emerging anymore. So my question to you is I know you've said that because they're not a circle hazardous waste, that you don't have any tools in your toolbox. I'd like to know the comment you just made about the drinking water aspects. What tool do you have in that program? And also would ask you about what RECRA or circular authority you might have to address these issues.
Those are questions I can't answer.
So we might get them from...
Well, you can submit them, the appropriate people at EPA
Okay.
could respond to them.
So also about a year ago, I submitted a comment response letter to the EPA about the 5-year report, talking about how, because we have PFCs, the selected remedy for the site is no longer applicable. And I was going to get a response to that by the end of September of this year, and I haven't seen it. So I'd like to see when that might be coming, because that talks to whether or not the remedial measure implemented is appropriate or not. Obviously, I don't think it is, because now we're seeing migration of these very persistent chemicals to the south. So,
Right, and I think we agree that that the remedy as it exists is not adequate at the
okay.
moment.
So the EPA is saying that now.
Well, but what's to be done about it is not as, you may have a better idea. We don't feel we have enough information to really design a system. And I think you would agree with that we could use a lot more information.
Actually, no, because the 1994 MOM for this site had 4 alternatives, and as
May
Representative
I
Bean-
interrupt, Mr. Chairman? And you're big on acronyms. You said MOM?
Management of migration was part of the record of decision. There's several documents that form the record of decision. So management of migration was a study of alternatives that, and you referenced one of them, that they picked MM2, it's called Management Migration 2, which was one of the cheaper approaches, which included a cap, and then on OU1, which is the landfill itself, and then just watching to see what happened to the chemicals.
So if I can say, so the contamination that was designed to address.
Yeah.
That,
Exactly. So that's my point, is that in this last 5-year review, that's not appropriate anymore, because we
Correct.
know that is not working. So I would say brush off the 1994 MOM. I just have been looking at it for the last 5 days, actually, in a lot of detail. Take MM4, which is the active remedial measure to control migration off the site. There's already detailed cost estimates in there. There's a cost estimate which included at the time only VOC and metals treatment. Take those blocks out, stick in the GAC. We know how much GACs cost. Portsmouth has very successfully implemented a pilot program there. Slide that in as a cost estimate, and it only increases the budget about $380,000 over the $3.2 million that was in the MOM, and it should be good to go. The hydro doesn't change since 1994, so I don't really think that that's a big issue.
well, I mean, I'm not a scientist. I'm not going to disagree for
Well,
one direction.
Can I just interrupt for a second? What I'd like to do is